If you like audiobooks or audio shows, check out a free trial of Audible. Just click the link in the description.
Welcome to Mindshock True Crime. This is your host, Bruce McGuire, and you are listening to the Maura Murray series. This is episode 62. Once again, I can't believe we're still going and this is unsolved, but we might be one step closer with this podcast. This podcast is going to focus on the UMPD and this theory, which I don't believe has been discussed before. Was Maura Murray fired from her security desk job the evening of February 5th, the evening of the Thursday night breakdown? Was the call she received on the security desk phone line, which the steerers and the obfuscators pretend could not have been the cause of the breakdown, and desperately grasped to the new narrative of the earlier breakdown, as opposed to what was more accurately reported closer to the time? Within weeks, we've gone over articles of UMPD referencing this phone call where they know exactly where it came from, but supposedly the person moved on. And of course, the access they would have would be to the internal UMass phone switchboard. And again, this is a critical point of contention for a lot of the steerers and the obfuscators. I'm not sure why, but if Maura Murray was indeed fired, that could explain quite a lot. And we'll be diving deep in also examining possible CI connections. As always, if you enjoyed the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal, help support the podcast, and help us get more episodes out, not only in this series, but in all our other series, and keep the awareness up in cold cases, because that is how they get solved. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications, make sure you allow your device to have those notifications come through. If you're still not getting notifications due to YouTube glitches or whatnot, you can just go to youtube.com/Mindshock. You can also check us out on Facebook, Reddit, Twitter, and Patreon. Patrons do get priority for case topic logical analysis, co-podcaster requests. Make sure you like this podcast and share it across social media platforms. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comments section. So first things first, if you haven't checked out our silent UMass episodes, check out the first 3, which those all focus on the Thursday night breakdown. And Karen Mayotte, her so-called supervisor, and her ever-changing stories, that has been all documented. And I recently uploaded just a clip from all those episodes. If you just want to listen to the information pertaining to the Thursday night breakdown and not all the other UMass stuff, you could also check that clip out. So, as a recap, of course, there was a call to the desk line. This was talked about extensively in the original family forums, which have since been shut down. Now, the new narratives, and of course, Sharon Rausch was deeply interested in this call. What does Sharon Rausch know? And if Maura Murray was fired by the UMPD and from her job, it's possible she told her friends they know, and there's some other funny business going on there, either related to her disappearance or not. For example, the university not wanting a stain on their reputation. And keep in mind, I think it was it Eric Santori? The CI that was killed at UMass, I think he was CI number 8, which was years later. Is it possible Maura Murray was their very first CI? Maybe their second, maybe the third, but that doesn't look good if your first CI gets into some trouble, possibly is met with some kind of foul play of some kind because UMPD and or Amherst, which, keep in mind, her credit card fraud, that was part of a, quote, ongoing investigation, end quote. So what other issues were going on there? Because there were the drug busts. What connections to the pizza place were there? Because if this was just some very, very small fraction of what was going on and they recruited Maura Murray, obviously the coincidence theorists claim this is all impossible and they just appeal to incredulity logical fallacies, straw man logical fallacies, black and white logical fallacies, and all these other fallacies in faith to back their position, which is kind of strange because if you want the case solved, wouldn't you? I mean, as of yet, it is unsolved, which means you have to explore all the theories if you truly want it to be solved. And we're not going to get into the motivations of the steers in this episode. So some astute researchers, of course, on the Maura Murray Mindshock subreddit, and here are some musings from several different researchers. I always was curious if someone actually fired Maura from her job. It is common practice to escort someone away from a desk when fired. They made Karen do it as her immediate supervisor and walked Maura back and would explain the call that came to Maura, and she was fired. UMPD realized when she went missing and was possibly suicidal that it may be connected back to them personally and wanted to avoid any lawsuits or problems. Maura did forego the rules right in front of her supervisor. Of course, talking on the cell phone is one of those rules. Karen was told to give a statement only to cover their ass as they followed all the rules. They told Karen to never tell anyone that Maura was fired. They must have known of her previous charges of credit card illegal use. This would make Karen nervous about certain details. Okay, so I don't remember this being discussed, but would this explain why Maura didn't want to go get Dunkin' Donuts with Karen, the person who fired her, even if she was friendly with Karen? Now, how would Maura feel at that moment if she was being fired, particularly if there's other stuff going on? Like, let's say, even for the sake of argument, let's say Kathleen Murray is having alcohol issues and she's talking on the phone and she's extremely upset about that. Now, of course, there are issues with Bill Rausch. Is he cheating on her, or maybe she's breaking up with him? Who knows? It's a long-term, it's a long distance, a long-term relationship. There's going to be emotional content regardless of who's breaking up with whom. So she's already distraught with all these different things. And on top of that, the full course load, the nursing program. And this is without even considering the CI angle. I'm going to get into that later, but let's pretend there's no possibility of a CI angle just for the moment. So even with all that, now she's caught talking on the phone. Either somebody reported her or one of the other supervisors saw her talking on the phone, but they were too cowardly to fire her on the spot and walk her out, or they just didn't want to do it. Anybody who's worked in any kind of office setting, they know those kinds of office politics or corporate politics. Usually the higher up individual who wants somebody fired, they're not going to personally walk the person out from their desk. They're going to have somebody else do it. They're going to have an underling do it. And they don't want to cause a scene either. So obviously someone like Karen, if she's a nice, caring person, which by all accounts she seems to be, and if she was fairly friendly with Maura, that would be a good candidate to go tell Maura she's fired and walk her out, because the shift didn't even end at that point. So again, would this scenario, would this theory explain a lot? And again, let's not fall for black and white fallacies. Kathleen having alcohol issues, Billy Rausch cheating on her, that's all still possibly very on the table and could contribute to her mindset. But now if she's actually fired, this is rough, because technically she's on probation and they could probably just fire her for talking on the phone, especially if someone keeps talking. Let's say she was talking on the phone. Let's say this other supervisor even mentioned it to her, like, you can't be talking on the phone. Don't let me catch you talking on the phone again. He walks away, and either someone else or he walks by again and he sees her talking on the phone again. I mean, because she talked to a few different individuals that night. And then who calls her from the desk line? Again, is it possible the desk line call is unrelated to the firing? Of course. Of course it is. All we know is it came from a common area. Or it could have came from the security office, too. Again, as long as it was on at UMass, the statements from the UMass officers make sense, where they know where the call came from, but they don't know who made the call. So either they're lying, and they do know who made the call, or they're being honest and they don't know. Now, if they're lying, then it would make more sense, or not necessarily. So if her supervisor fired her but didn't tell anybody because they didn't want to look bad, then the officers could still be telling the truth. And they know it came from the security office, but they don't know who made the particular call. I mean, I would think they would find out and the supervisor wouldn't lie to them, but who knows what else the security office, the supervisor's covering. If the supervisor is also involved in some kind of drug or illicit activity, who knows? They could have, and if people knew him, they wouldn't necessarily assume the security supervisor's lying. Why would they investigate that? I mean, that's something the coincidence theorists always fail to understand, the basics of ego and psychology. Even if something has nothing to do with a particular situation, if an individual has something else that they don't want public or they just don't want to be investigated, they're not necessarily going to tell the truth about everything all the time if it might threaten something else that's unrelated. So, again, in the previous podcast, I also mentioned that Karen was not the one who originally noticed Maura upset or crying. Karen was relayed this information, and Karen was the one who went to Maura after the fact. So who reported this, we still don't really know, but this information was given to another supervisor. So this other supervisor is also tricky because he's under the umbrella for UMPD, and apparently they have his name. And this guy was a plainclothes surveillance for contracting clients to prevent internal and external theft. Now, again, if there is some kind of CI situation or undercover operations with or without the FBI, keep in mind the FBI went straight to UMass, even though they weren't even officially on the case. And again, if there was a gag order or whatnot. So if there was some kind of undercover FBI agent or some kind of Whitey Bulger connection, or they had that biggest drug bust ever in Kennedy Hall. So, and some people believe that Domino's was somehow being used as a front, a drug front, along with their pizza delivery. And again, Maura's late night calls to Domino's after hours. Who knows what this is all about? Is she acting as a CI? We don't know. But if there's a bigger operation, are they also bringing people like this security supervisor into the loop? And he's also performing other actions that nobody knows about. We don't know. Again, these are all unknown variables. So again, UMass PD, by all accounts, would UMass PD know about the credit card theft and her being on probation? I mean, unless they're the most incompetent department ever, and Amherst does not communicate with them. But also keep in mind, Amherst police officers were at UMass, not only with this sting op on Maura. Again, who knows how much that costs. So over $78, how much taxpayer money was wasted to set up a sting operation over 70-something bucks of pizza? And how often does that happen? Again, anybody out there listening, feel free to comment if you know of any other cases, not just that, but also doing mugshots in dorm hallways. So mugshots that, again, don't quite look like Maura, but that's a topic for another podcast. So would Amherst notify UMPD of a sting op in their jurisdiction on campus? And even if they're technically required to do so, that doesn't mean they did. Again, especially if this was also part of some FBI operation. Again, I'm not saying it was or it wasn't. I'm saying these are unknown variables. Okay, so if UMPD is aware that Maura is on probation, what would the ramifications be for her repeatedly talking on the phone? Because even if she's not on probation, if somebody working security at the desk with signing people in, if they're constantly on the phone, they're going to get fired, even if they weren't on probation, even if they didn't have some kind of credit card fraud situation. So if Maura was caught talking on the phone again and again and again repeatedly, I mean, they would have every right to fire her, would they not? I mean, is this theory really that outlandish? So, again, as proper protocol, when you're firing somebody, a lot of the times you'd have either some kind of security officer, some kind of supervisor, somebody there with them, because people react differently to getting fired. You know, nobody wants a scene. So if they told Karen to go take care of it, and if Maura was that upset that, you know, she wouldn't really want to talk to Karen. So the whole catatonic comment, did that all come from Karen? Because she wasn't catatonic talking on the phone to Kathleen or Bill by their accounts. So Karen is the only one saying she was catatonic. Was it catatonic, or was Maura just pissed because she got fired and she really didn't feel like talking to Karen, her supervisor, escorting her from her job after she was getting fired? So another interesting point is apparently there was no email to UMPD regarding her not working the security desk due to her family emergency. She sent the email to the art gallery and to her nursing to the nursing program, informing them of her death in the family emergency, whatever it was, and her absence. So either Maura or whomever was writing these emails on Maura's behalf to make it look like Maura was leaving UMass. Again, we have no actual definitive evidence she ever left the UMass area. The steers and the obfuscators, the trolls, they all want to desperately maintain that she was definitely at the staged accident scene at the Weather and Barn Corner in Haverhill, New Hampshire. Obviously, there's no actual definitive evidence of that. And again, we have Bill Rausch going to UMass. We have FBI going to UMass all immediately. See, it's just interesting. It's very curious. But either way, if there was a CI situation or not, let's say there's no CI situation, someone at UMPD is involved in whatever's going on with Maura. Either they're responsible, either there's foul play, or maybe they're helping her. Maybe she wants to run away, start a new life, whatever. Either way, whether Maura is writing those emails or someone else is writing those emails, that someone else would have to be familiar with her getting fired if she got fired. Does that explain the lack of an email to UMPD? Because why would you email UMPD if you got fired? You don't need to work the security desk ever again. And another thing, Karen does have a police statement. What does the police statement say? Because that could clear up the timeline. That could clear up what kind of phone call that was, whether there was a 12:40 a.m. call to the desk line, and this whole breakdown was around 1 a.m. as all the information closer to the time that it happened indicates. But what else would be in that police report? Would Karen, if Maura got fired, and Karen told the truth in the report and said Maura got fired, do they not want to get that out there because it makes UMPD and UMass kind of look bad because her spiral out of control was after she got fired? I don't know. I'm not saying that. If she was talking on the phone a lot, they had every right to fire her. So I'm not sure that's it. It almost seems like there would have to be something more to it. Again, possibly some kind of CI situation. And if the CI situation was also related to her being fired, is that why the dorm, UMPD was in her dorm room right away? Is that why they were trying to cover all these bases? Did they contribute to making it look like she left when she didn't? Because they didn't want anything pointing back at UMPD. Again, either some CI situation, some illicit activity. It's curious because it almost would explain a lot of this funny business and silent UMass. Again, we don't have her coworkers at the UMPD speaking out on her behalf, the UMPD police chief making press conferences or news report appeals to bring Maura home and raise awareness. I mean, this is a dead, silent UMass campus in relation to Maura Murray. No security footage being released of Maura Murray on campus in the common areas. Of course, in the late 90s, the security cameras already started being installed. So they had security cameras in the parking lots and in certain common areas. So there would be footage of Maura Murray. There would be footage of the Saturn if indeed it was in that parking lot, because we don't know that either. The Saturn could have left UMass days before. We have no idea. There's no evidence to to prove any of that. Now, also, if UMPD really did think Maura Murray was suicidal and they believed she killed herself due to being fired, I mean, again, I don't know. Different individuals, different supervisors, what would they think? What lengths would they go to kind of try to avoid blame there, especially if they think it's kind of a moot point at that point, especially if they're also possibly involved in some kind of drug situation. What would they do? Because also keep in mind, UMPD did release Fred Murray's police statement. So if Fred Murray didn't know that she got fired, or at least at the time, and made no mention of the firing, then his police statement would be okay to release. Whereas Karen's, maybe not, if they're trying to keep that covered up. Another poster said this: was Karen just walking her back to her dorm, only doing so without incident. My friend many years ago had layoffs at a computer tech company. Same thing occurred as protocol. A security officer came to his desk, helped, in quotes, him pack up, and escorted him to his car in the parking lot. He was never a threat. It was only protocol. So, quite interesting. So, I guess this all comes down to if there's a CI component. If there's a CI component here. And also, if there's another individual involved, let's say she is a CI, and UMPD is involved, let's say there's a corrupt officer within UMPD, and they find out that Maura is a CI, and she starts to find, if this UMPD officer is somehow assisting these drug operations possibly related to Domino's, and he finds out Maura's a CI, he or she finds that out, what would happen in that situation? Would they also try to get Maura fired? Would they try to make Maura's life miserable? Perhaps they're not sick and they weren't going to murder Maura. That was never the intention. They just wanted to cause her some trouble. And how far that went, we don't know. Another thing we didn't really think about, is there a witness that nobody knows about? Possibly, again, maybe it's a police cadet who either maybe he lied and said that he saw Maura Murray's Saturn hit Patrick Vassie, and he reported that to UMPD and they wanted to keep it silent. Could that be a possible reason why they basically wanted to sweep the Vassie hit and run, or at least in relation to Maura, under the rug? Because let's say Maura Murray did not hit Patrick Vassie, or nobody even borrowed her car. But what if someone else lied and said they saw her Saturn hit Patrick Vassie? Or they lied and said that Maura, left the security desk for however long. Like, if this is a trusted person and they didn't bother to verify this information, because if she was only gone for 10, 20 minutes, I mean, who knows? If whoever this was, because UMPD does also overlook the sign-in people at the security desks. That's part of their responsibilities, as we went over in previous podcasts. So if they know for a fact no other security could verify, and Maura really was at the desk, but they lied and said she wasn't, and that was a time span where she could have possibly hit Patrick Vassie. So what if they somehow got UMPD to think that Maura Murray at least possibly might have been involved in the Patrick Vassie hit and run, even if she wasn't? What would have happened after that? Would they fire her for that? Or, I mean, I don't know. Just again, when egos become involved, when there's certain manipulative people involved, I mean, these kinds of individuals are in every workplace out there, in every industry. So again, it's just something to keep in mind. Anybody who's worked in any industry, they all have plenty of stories of all the backstabbing and manipulation that could go on in the workplace. And this does not mean the information being levied against individuals is actually true, but there's a lot of lying going on. Humans are capable of lying. I know the steerers, the obfuscators, and the trolls, they like to pretend everything is gospel, especially Butch Atwood, who said whoever was at the scene didn't even look like in the pictures. They like to take certain statements from certain humans as some kind of gospel divine truth that can't be questioned. But anybody with a brain obviously knows fallible humans are fallible, capable of lying or corruption. So it is interesting. So FBI came to UMass and did interviews. They did not, by all accounts, the FBI did not interview the neighbors at the staged accident scene. They did interview people at UMass, though. Some people believe there were gag orders, and that's why people aren't talking. That's curious. I mean, I don't know how much of a coincidence theorist you have to be to just dismiss that outright, but I think that's kind of curious. That's curious. And what other astute researchers, again, on the Mindshock Reddit have pointed out is that the FBI doesn't immediately, right off the bat, get involved with missing adults unless there's definitive proof that a crime occurred across a state line or they're personally invited by local departments. So by all accounts, UMPD did not ask the FBI to come in immediately. Maybe they did, which would be kind of strange, especially if this is a DUI walkaway. Even if they asked the FBI, why would they actually come? I mean, they would probably want to wait long. I mean, this is a DUI walkaway by all accounts at the time that this all went down. So a lot of curiosities here. But if Maura Murray was fired from UMPD that Thursday night, there was no real catatonic state. It was just a pissed off 21-year-old who had a lot going on in her life who just didn't really feel like talking to Karen, the person escorting her from the desk she was just fired from. Does that explain a lot of things? Is that a mind-shocking enough explanation, or is the CIA, FBI, drug dealing, possible UMPD corruption, would that be necessary to make it all the pieces fit? Maybe. I don't know. I wasn't there. And as far as I know, most of the narrative steerers were not there either. But apparently there were a couple who were at UMass at that time. Hope you guys enjoyed another edition of Mindshock True Crime in the Maura Murray series. Plenty more to go over. If you like the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell for notifications. Make sure you allow your device to have those notifications come through. Or you can just go to youtube.com/Mindshock. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to hit that like button. Share it across social media platforms to keep the awareness up, not just in this cold case, but in other cold cases as well. You can check us out, Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comment section. This is Bruce McGuire, signing off. Catch you guys next time.